Hello everyone and welcome to a new video in the Svelte D3 series. Today we are going to talk about line charts and continue what we already started in the last video where we talked about loading data. Let me just take you on my screen. So here you can see a very nice line chart that I did on WizHub a while ago. And today we're going to look into how we build such line charts with all these different lines. Let's now switch into the code editor and see what we already have. So I've already set up this app here that we built last time, where we built these two stores, the data store and a data by year store. And I already console logged here the data store. Let's just have a look at that. And it's basically a lot of data, which is this large array of objects where we have for each year from 1940 up to today, 2024, 366 entries for each day of this year with a value, which is the surface temperature globally, so the global surface temperature on Earth. And we can see how that changes within the year, over the years. And what we already did, we built this data by year store. So I'm just logging this one here. And you remember when we want the value of a store, we need the $ here in front. Let me just refresh that. And then we have here the data by year, which is an array of 85 entries, which is the 85 years that we are covering with this data set. And this is just a rearrangement of the original data set where we have now in each object a key, which is the year that we're looking at. And then there's an additional object or array values, which holds then all the 366 temperature values of this year. So here you can see this is all the year 1940, and then we see the day of year 1. We had a value of 11.721, and it goes on, it goes on, it goes on. So we have now these 85 entries, which is our 85 lines that we want to draw. Because here in this original chart, every line is 1 year. And it's just like the last year here highlighted in red and the current year highlighted in blue. It's not completed yet, of course. And then all the other year is here in white. And then seeing the year from day 1 to day 366 here in the end. You can see it's on surface, it's warmer in summer because there's more land surface on the northern hemisphere. So yeah, that's basically it. Let's just have a look into these stores where we get this data from. So I have an additional file, stores.js, and here we loaded the data, and then we did this rearrangement here, the data by year, where we're using the groups function from D3. So let me just close that so that we get a little bit more space here. And yeah, that's basically it. If you want to learn again how we did that, I refer you to the previous video. I also have a link in the description, so no problem to go back. Then in our app.Svelte, which is our main rendering component here, I have, besides the console log, I already have the measured width and height. So maybe, let's just see where this comes from. So we have this main element here, which has a width and a height, which is dynamically adapting to the browser viewport. And we are measuring this height and width here with the bind directive. I also have a video in my teaching series where you can learn about that. Well, that's basically it. And what we want to do is we want to have like an SVG here. And this SVG should have a width of our JavaScript width variable, and it should get a height with the height variable. So now we have an SVG here. It's not visible yet. I also made the background a little bit black. So yeah, I'm a big dark mode fan, and I think this line chart looks pretty nice with the dark background. But anyways, just some style decisions, very arbitrary, no matter. And I already defined here a little object with some colors that we could use later on to color our lines. All right, so I think we do not need the data, the raw data with this 31,000 entries here. We just need this data by year here because that's what we want to render. And yeah, similar to stuff that I did previously, we need something like an X scale and a Y scale where we can recompute the day of year, which is our X-axis, into pixels, and where we can recompute our values, so the temperature values, which is our Y-axis, into pixels as well. So I do a reactive X scale, and in D3 we can build scale functions, so functions that can do this transformation from our data space into the pixel space with the scale linear function. So we have to import that from D3. Oh well, my code editor is doing that automatically. Very nice. So let's just put in an extra line here. So we are importing scale linear from D3. And then we need the domain, so which is basically the extent of our input data. And we need a range, which is the extent of our pixel space. Well, and here it is for the range quite simple, because for the X scale we just want to go from 0 to the width. But for the domain we need now the day of year span. I mean, we know it's going from 1 to 366. That's quite fixed, so we could use that. What we could do as well, we could do this based on the data. So, and here we could use a store again, because usually all these data rearrangements, I don't want to have them in the Svelte component, which is just doing the rendering for our user with a given width and height. So, well, this is not dependent on the width and height. So we could go to our store, and in the store we could just build another store, which we call the how do we call it, the day of year domain. And yeah, this should be a const, and this store is a derived store. So this derived function is imported from svelte/store, and this is making it possible that we can build another store which is dependent on another store. And this store should be just dependent on data, which is our loaded data. And then as the second argument, we put in a function where we get the value of our data store, and we can work with that now. And what we could do is we could just use the extend function from D3. So yeah, it's already imported here. We could use the extend function, put in all our data values, and then access with this accessor function the d.day of year, because that, if you look here into our values, that day of year, this was the property name of like the day of year, which is running from 1 to 366. We know that, but could be maybe different for some other data set, whatever. With that, we get like now this domain from 1 to 366, and we can immediately return it, I think. So then we have a store, a day of year domain store. We go back to our app.svelte and we import that store here. And then we could use the day of year domain here instead of this constant. And we need the value of this store, so we use the $sign again. So this should give us an X scale function. So then we do also Y scale function. And for the Y scale function, we also use scale linear. And for the domain here, we want to fill in like the whole range of our possible temperatures from the lowest temperature to the highest temperature, so that we know how to scale them to our browser window later on. So maybe we could also use a store which is like a value domain store, something like that. Doesn't exist yet. Let's just set the range, and then we say, okay, the lowest temperature should go to the very bottom of the SVG. And you remember how the coordinate system in SVG works. So 0 is on top, and then the value of y grows to the bottom. So it's inverse to the intuitive way how diagrams work usually. So we have to put in here, this goes from height, which is our maximum extent of that SVG, to 0. Well, but now our value domain, we don't have it. So let's import it here already, but then we need to export it as well. So I would say I'm just copying that whole day of year domain, and we are doing here a value domain. We are putting in the data again, but now we are not looking at the extent of d.day of year, but we are looking at d.value, because value holds the temperature values. And if we store that now, and I just do a reload, we do not get any errors, so this is looking fine so far. So now we have an X scale and a Y scale. All right. Cool. So now I'm just removing that console log for now. And now we want to take our data and do the transformation to the pixel space. And what I usually recommend is to do that as a separate array and not doing it here in our HTML outline directly, which is possible, but let's just create a new array, rendered data. And this takes the, how was it called again? The data by year store. So we are grabbing the value of the data by year store, which is this array which we're looking at here already. And we are mapping over that, and then let's get all these entries into D. And then we have here in d.values, we have all these values. Let me open that. Having now the actual values of day of year and value in it, and we want to transform day of year into an X pixel coordinate, and we want to transform value into a Y coordinate. So we have to map these values again. So we have here an array within an array. So we should do something like creating a new variable, rendered values probably. And we are grabbing d.values. And to not confuse you, I could use D here, but let's take V because it's our values array. And now we are going all over these values, and I would say we're just returning everything we have. So this is basically just copying this whole array because we are destructuring. We just return it here again. But we also want to, for every day of year, we want to get now an X value. So we're using the X scale and put in, we dot day of year. And we want to have a Y value where we use our Y scale function. And then we put in here we dot, what was it? Value. All right. So now we get these rendered values here. And for each year, we are now returning an object with the old values, which is the key and the values. But then we are overwriting the values with the rendered values like that. And if we console log that now, let's see if it works. So rendered data is now a nice little thing. So now we're getting here d.values is not a function. Oh, we just missed the dot map here. Nice. Okay, so now it's working. So we're getting again an 85 member array. There is still the key with the year, and there is the values, which is an array of 366 or 365. Yeah, because here this is of course a leap year, and this is not leap years. And then let's see how these value objects look like. Let's just open one. And that's looking good so far. So we have here for day of year 1, we get an X value of 0, which makes sense because it's on the very left side. And here we get for this value 11 point something degrees, we're getting a Y value, which is looking quite good actually. So let's just look for the second day of year. Now X is a little bit higher. Yeah, that makes sense. That's looking good. So now for each of these values arrays, we want to create now a line. And to create lines in JavaScript with D3, we can use a line generator, and D3 offers a so-called line function. And we could use that line function to create a line generator. So we are just invoking the line function, then we can use the X method to tell now D3 or the line function, hey, where do you find in an array the X values? And this is just done with an accessor function. So it runs later through our values and then looks for the X properties with this accessor function here. And we do the same for Y, where we say, okay, let's grab Y here. So this is now a line generator function which takes an array with pixel data. The X and Y data are stored in the X and Y properties, and then transforms it to an SVG path D attribute. So we're looking like how it does look like. So we can use that here, where we return for every year an object. We could just say, well, here, generate already a path. We use our line generator and pass in the rendered values. And now I'm storing that, and we'll have a look how that looks like. So we get our array for every year, an entry. And then here you can see there are the values, but now there's also a path. And this is, so here's the full path. This is basically how paths are working in SVG. So this is nothing D3 Svelte stuff. No, this is basic SVG, scalable vector graphics. This is a description how a path should be drawn. So let me just explain you a little bit. M0, 1110.34 means, hey, put your pencil to the position X0 and Y 1110. And then draw a line, this is this L here, oh, can I mark that? Draw a line to the new position X 0.668 and Y 1122.786. Then draw a line to then and then. So it's a lot of small lines, and this is giving us one full line for each year. So now we could just use this path information in our HTML part within the SVG to draw it. So let's try that. So here within the SVG we are setting up an each loop, and we run this. This each loop goes over our, let's see how that looks like, our rendered data. It takes our rendered data, and here we are basically getting the data of 1 year, but we just want to have now this path property from it, so we could instantly destructure path from here. Let's just close this each loop, and for each year we are building a path, and a path is taking a D argument where we're putting in our path string. And now we are saving this, and we basically see nothing. So let's just have a look into the HTML, what's going on here. But we're getting the paths here, and I think this is just because we have a black background and the default color for paths is black as well. So let's close the console for now so that we get our full viewport, and let's just do some styling. So we could, here in the CSS, we could grab a path and say, well, a fill should not be present, but we should use a stroke of white maybe. And then yes, we're getting all the lines. This is looking perfectly fine. So pretty cool. Let's just see. Yeah, this is looking nicely. Very good. All right, it looks very black and white. So now let's do some additional styling. So what I would propose here is now that we use these different colors that I already here defined, so that we do 2023 and 2024 in different colors, so that we can highlight last year and this year. We can do that basically by defining on the rendered data array. You can just do another variable, another property which we call stroke, where you put in the color. So I would say we can just do something like, let's see if that works. In d.key we have our current year. So what we could do, we could use this colors object and then put in d.key. This should give, at least for 2024 and 2023, these two colors, but not for all the other years. So let's see how that works. And then we destructure stroke here also from our rendered data and use then the stroke inline property here and delete it from the SVG. So now let's see what's happening. Oh yeah, that's looking nice. So we are getting now these 2 years here. And I think that for all the other years that are not 2023 or 2024, the stroke is undefined. So we could do something like that where we say, okay, when this is not defined, then use just colors.other. And yeah, this is working. Pretty nice. So we're now getting like this white stuff here. So now, okay, it's the last year and this year is highlighted by color, but it's not very visible. So what we should do is we should maybe adjust the stroke width. So we're doing here a stroke width, and we're saying if, and we're just putting 2024 and 2023 in an array and say dot includes d.key, which means if d.key is 2024 or 2023, then we are doing a stroke width of 2.0 maybe, and otherwise 0.5. I have no idea. Let's see how that works out. So stroke width can here also be structured from rendered data, and then we say stroke dash width. Here it is. Stroke width. Let's see how that looks like. Oh, okay, nice. Well, 2.0 maybe is not enough, so let's try 4. Yeah, okay, nice. Now what we can also do is we could introduce some opacity. So we could say, well, let's take just the same pattern here. So if we are 2024 or 2023, we have an opacity of 1.0. Otherwise, we're using an opacity of 0.2 maybe. So let's also destructure the opacity from here and use the opacity here. Yeah, that's very dark now. Maybe let's use 0.3. Better. Maybe this is because the line width are very small. Yeah, this is looking nice. Maybe 0.2 works now as well. So yeah, this is always playing around, designing by coding. All right, looks good so far. And is it responsive? Yeah, it is. It is responsive. So this is because every time I change the width or the height, these X and Y scale function are getting recalculated because width and height are there, and then rendered data is recalculated as well, and then this is drawn again, so we can get rid of the console log basically. So all right, nice. What we also could do is now these lines are not looking very smoothly because it's just yeah, putting lines in between our data values. So we can use some, we could use some curve smoothing. So there are some smoothing functions in D3. For example, you could use curve, what is called monotone X. In the D3 documentation, you find all these different curving functions. And the good thing is we could just choose this curving function in our line generator. There's a curve method. We just put this curve monotone X here. And then all these lines are looking a little bit smoother. Yeah, and then of course we could play a lot. For example, here the end of our 2024 line is very rough, so we could make this a little bit more round. So we could just say for our path style, there is something which is called stroke line cap. I could put that to round, and then we are getting like this round ends here. This is, yeah, I mean, it's very small. So let's look a little bit here. So yeah, nice. Yeah, but that's it. This is what I wanted to build. This is how line charts go in D3 plus Svelte. So we are basically building these parts here in the HTML part and doing all the rendered stuff, which is calculated by JavaScript here in the JavaScript part in this new rendered data array. And yeah, this is like a lot of patterns that you could just reuse. And I think what is also quite interesting is the separation between data wrangling versus data presentation, because I do all the data wrangling stuff here in this separate store in stores.js, because then this is separate. This is one single source of truth. You could just use it wherever you like it. And yeah, just very well separated and reusable. And this works with whatever data you have. So thanks very much for watching. And have fun with Svelte plus D3. Bye.